Alright, so we're going to talk about midpoint and bisect and midpoint formula. Now, the midpoint of a line segment is a point that separates the segment into two segments of equal measure. Now, this is key, the two segments of equal measures. So, if you see, we've got A and M and B. So, M is the midpoint of this line A and B. Now M separates these two segments into two equal parts. So M is on A, B, and A and M and B. Now, the bisector of a line segment is a line or array or a segment that separates the segment into two segments of equal measures, two congruent segments. So if we look here, EF is a bisector of CD. So that means that CM and MD are both equal to each other, and the bisector is EF. So here's the midpoint formula. It's x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Now, M is the midpoint of A and B. So what's the coordinate of M? So if we look down here, we've got 8 plus 2 divided by 2 is 5. 8 plus 2 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. So the coordinate of M would be 5, and M is in the middle of A and B. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at this first example here. It says find the coordinates of the midpoint A and B. Now, A's endpoint is -2, 3. And B is 5, -2. So how do we solve that? Well, let's look. Okay, first we're going to start with our midpoint formula, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2. y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Now let's go back and see what our coordinates are. The coordinates of A is -2, 3. So we've got -2, 3 here. Now the coordinates of B were 5 and -2. So we're going to use this first formula. So x1 plus x2 over 2. So our first x is -2 and our second x is 5. So -2 plus 5 divided by 2 is 3/2. Then we need to find our y coordinate. So y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So y1 is 3, y2 is a -2, divided by 2, which is 1/2. So the midpoint of A and B, the coordinates of the midpoint, are 3/2 and 1/2. Okay? So now let's use another example. So here we go. Example 2. We've got one line segment, which is 6, -4, and the second one, which is 1, 8. And we need to find the midpoint of those two points. So here we've got 6, -4, so over 6 down 4, and then we've got 1, 8, so 1 up 8. And we need to find the midpoint between these two. So let's set up our midpoint formula. x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. Now, our first coordinate is 6, -4, and our second is 1, 8. So we've got 6 plus 1, our two x's, so x1 and x2, so 6 plus 1 over 2, which is 7/2. We've got our y1 plus y2, so y1 is -4, y2 is 8, and divided by 2. So 8 plus a -4 is a +4/2, which is 2. So the midpoint between 6, -4, and 1 and 8 is 7/2 and 2. 7/2 divided by is 3/2. So 3/2 up 2, and that is the midpoint between our 2 points. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look again . So now we're going to look at midpoint, which has been bisected. So if we look here, we've got the measure of PS and the measure of TS. And remember, when it's bisected, it cuts PS and TS into half. So we know that PS and TS have to equal each other. But what we're looking for down here is we're looking for, if you look, we're looking for the measure of the entire thing, PT. We're also looking for PS and ST. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the information they give us. Now they tell us that the measure of PS is 4x plus 3, and then the measure of TS is 9x minus 17. Now we know those two are equal to each other. So I went ahead and equaled them to themselves. So if you look up here, I said the measure of PS is 4x plus 3, and the measure of TS is 9x minus 17. Remember, when something bisects a line, that means it cuts it in half, which also means that they're equal to each other. So let's go ahead and set those up. So 4x plus 3 is 9x minus 17, and now we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So I add 17 to both sides, and I get 20 plus 4x equals 9x. Then what I did was I went ahead and minus 4x from both sides, so I've got 20 equals 5x, because 9x minus 4x is 5x. Then I'm trying to get x by itself, so I divide by 5, I divide by 5, and our x is 4. Now, you remember, it's not just looking for x. They want to know the actual length of PS and TS. So we take our x and we plug it back in. So I went ahead and plugged it back in. So I took my 4 and I plugged it back in here. So my first line, PS, was 4x plus 3. So 4 times 4 plus 3 is 19. So the length of PS is 19. And TS here, we plugged x back in, which was 4. So 9 times 4 is 36, minus 17 is 19, and TS is 19. All right. Now our second example here is the measure of PV is 3x plus 38, and the measure of RV is 10x minus 4. So here we've got PV is 3x plus 38, and RV is 10x minus 4. So let's go take a look. All right, so I said that PV was 3x plus 38 and RV was 10x minus 4. Now again, remember, if something bisects it, so if you see TV bisects P and R, we're saying that it cuts it in half. So PV equals RV. So we have to equal them to each other. So 3x plus 38 equals 10x minus 4. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine like terms and solve for x. So we add 4 to both sides, and we get 42 plus 3x equals 10x. Now we're going to have to go ahead and minus 3x from both sides, which we did, and we get 42 equals 7x. Okay, then we went ahead and divided by 7, and x is 6. Now again, remember, it asks us what the length of PV and RV is. So we have to take our x and we have to plug it back in. So the length of PV was 3x plus 38. So I went ahead and plugged in the 6 for x. So 3 times 6 is 18 plus 38 is 56. Then RV, we've got 10 times 6 minus 4. 60 minus 4 is 56. And then lastly, it asks us what the entire line equals. So I went ahead and did 56 plus 56 is 112. And that is how we do our midpoint formula, and we find the midpoint between 2 points on a line when we can't just count the spaces. And that's also how we find what each line equals when another line bisects a different line.